Okay, guys, I'm very excited to have these guests on my podcast today. I've got Loris Profitt and Brooke Forth with Professional Realty Services.
Thanks for having us.
Oh, thank you. Okay, the first question I always ask, kind of out of the get-go. I just said get-go. Get-go? Get-go. I'm going to make that a thing now. Whoops. I'm going to start with you, Loris, on how long have you been in the real estate industry?
Well, I like to say that I got my license June 1st of 1994
You know the date.
because that sounds better than 30 years. 30 years, it sounds so long. How could I be that old? And I
Right.
was 29 when I got my license, so that dates me, doesn't it?
I like that, though. That's cute. You know the exact date.
Know the date.
What about you, Brooke?
I don't know the exact date, but it was mid 2019, November, that I started with Loris, and then COVID hit. And so my test was postponed until June of 2020. So
Oh, that far. For both states?
I got Washington first and then did Idaho like the end of that summer.
Sure.
It was a weird time.
It was such a weird time. I had my daughter in COVID, and just the medical, everything was different. I worked in the medical field, and it totally changed, I think, which is kind of where I'm at now, is I changed jobs. You just fixated on, staying away from everybody. And I wanted to be home in that mindset. I was stuck there of wanting to be home, but
Well, it changed everything. It changed the way that we do business still.
absolutely.
Changed the way we relate to each other, in some positive ways and some negative ways, I think.
Right.
That society is different.
Well, even they still have like COVID things in like rules, and it's just, I don't know if we'll ever. It definitely changed us completely,
Did.
but I don't know if it was for the good or what. But I want to kind of go into why you got in the industry, or what you did maybe beforehand to get where you are today.
Well, of course I knew because we're fans of your podcast. So I knew you'd ask this question. And I guess in my mind, we have rehearsed how to say it in a super positive way. But my husband and I had 3 little boys, and I was a stay-at-home mom. And then accidentally, kind of, because I was a stay-at-home mom and that was kind of unusual, I had lots of friends and relatives whose sitters would get sick or something would happen. And so I kind of became, this sounds terrible, a dumping ground, but I became the spot to drop your kids off. And so I just had kids, extra kids all the time, which was great for my boys because they didn't have sisters, but they had cousins that they could play with. And so finally, friends and relatives said, you should just get a daycare license because you're watching our kids anyway. And I wouldn't charge them because I'm not doing this. This is not my job. I'm doing this as a favor. So in, I think 1988, that sounds so long ago, I did get I got a daycare license, and I did that very happily for 7 years. And I just had the best kids.
Oh, wow.
The best kids. But then when our youngest son was ready to go to school, it was time to either get a whole new bunch of kids or do something different. And the money that I earned from daycare, my husband and I put into rentals. And so we had 9 units of rentals, and it seemed just a natural step to go to get some more or to go into real estate in some way. I had always kind of thought about it because especially the schedule was good. If you have kids, it's flexible. And I always wanted to be there for whatever they were doing. So then kind of at the same time, and I just feel like this was divine intervention. It's a weird story. I always say I'm going to write a book. This will be a chapter. So a lady, no kidding, I have a house full of kids, and a lady knocks on our door, and she knows that we own a certain piece of property with a river view on Clemens Road in between Clarkson and Asotin, and we haven't owned it very long, 4 or 5 years. We're going to build a house there, but hadn't yet. And she wants to pay us 10 times what we have invested in it. Oh, this is interesting. But so got her information, closed the door before the kids get out, and so we talked about it. But at that time, there was a 28% capital gain. So whatever, and I really wanted, my cousin's an architect, and she was going to draw the plan. I really wanted to live there, but 10 times what you invested in a short amount of time is a good return.
Yeah.
So even for a stay-at-home mom, can figure out that pretty quickly. So we decided, my husband and I decided, yes, we'll sell, but we need to find something to reinvest. So we just foolishly thought, we'll just go buy a duplex or something and avoid that capital gain. And so now I know, this is the part I didn't really want to share, but I will, transparent. I called the agent that we had used, Laura Turner. She has passed now, loved her. She was just fabulous. She was in Arizona for the winter. Haven't figured out how to do that yet. And then I called some other agents, and I had 3 or maybe 4 really laughably horrible experiences with real estate agents.
No.
So bad, so bad. So my husband's from Grangeville, and we contacted an agent in Grangeville, and as it turns out, another couple and his brother, dear friends, were in a similar predicament. They had a capital gain issue, and so we ended up buying the Bollinger Building downtown from a Grangeville agent. And then our youngest son was going to school. It was a perfect time to transition into something else, and so I became the manager of the Bollinger Building, which was wonderful. I went to school. My cousin Jim Collier, who has all kinds of degrees and education, said, well, I've always thought about getting a real estate license. I'll go to school with you. So off we went to LCSC at the time and got a real estate license. I met Rhonda Laybourne there. She was actually my neighbor, but I didn't know it. We lived around the corner from each other and had been waving to each other for several years, but didn't know her. And so there she is in class. And so we become friends. And she managed the Town Square Mall at the time and really helped me managing the Bollinger Building, which then later there was a fire, of course. And the FBI was one of my tenants, along with some other, it is just tragic still and never explained. So I tell people I have been investigated by the FBI because, they always think, oh, it was an arson. The FBI agents that interviewed me at the time said, if you're an arsonist, you're the dumbest one we've ever met, because our return was huge.
Oh, gosh.
And the fire's never been explained.
Yeah.
It's an open investigation. It's very, very sad. But all those steps got me to a position and a place that I may not have gone if I'd had a good experience.
Right.
And I just bought my little duplex. I'd still probably own it and would have done something else with my life. So I just feel like that was the perfect thing.
Yeah. Ripple effect.
So that was a long explanation.
I love that, though. What a unique story. But to get, where you're at. Like looking over at Brooke. Like,
It's my turn.
that's your turn.
Mine is a little different, but it is kind of funny. You look back and you see how things like align over the years. So I got married in 2005, December. And right after that, my husband had a little house and we were like, okay, now we're grown up. So we're going to have kids. We need more space. And so we didn't know who to call. He had done a for sale by owner with his uncle on his first house. And so we called a friend who was a new agent and love her to death. But it wasn't the best buying experience. And I remember sitting in that house the very first night we were there and looking at my husband and like, I want to go home. I don't want to be here, and he's like, I thought you wanted it. And I was like, well, I thought you really wanted it. And it was kind of this snap decision. And so I just always remember that feeling of like, oh, am I sure about this? And then we made it a great home and we had our babies there. And I just always thought like real estate's so interesting. Like I wasn't educated. I didn't know really what was happening. And then I just always thought it was an interesting business. And so life goes on and I was a stay-at-home mom for years. And then my husband started training Loris, and that's how we met her. And then came time for us to upsize again. And so we go through that process, and it was a super positive, great process. And once again, I'm like, real estate, so interesting. Like, I really should have thought about that when I was younger, and you're trying to figure out what you're going to do. And just one of those things you never thought about. And then in November of 2019, my husband and I, we had worked for a family business. Girls are in elementary school, and we just kind of made a decision that we needed to make some changes. And so one day I was jobless, and my husband happened to enter the table, text Loris and say, hey, you know anybody who's hiring? Because he knows that I'd always talked about oh, I should have thought about that. And all of a sudden he's like, Loris is going to come talk to us on Monday. And the rest is history.
Oh, that's
I had a job.
cool. Oh, how fun.
So that it's kind of, things just align and you just never know where it's going to go. But
starting your career under, Loris
I couldn't imagine. I always say, I really think it should be an apprenticeship type of job, because I don't know how someone comes in without a mentor or someone. There's just so many ins and outs and ups and downs. And yes, I am so blessed that,
Well, I'm the blessed one. But I also want to say that I went to work for Doris Clark. She's not in the business anymore. At Clark & Associates, it was a very small office. And she gave me such an opportunity because I got to follow her. And
when you first started.
When I first started. And she was the top in 1994. She was the top agent in the market. And she said at the time it was because she knew I was watching. And so she just went back to the basics and did everything the way, by the book, the way it should be done, because she didn't want to disappoint me or show me the wrong way.
Yeah.
And so I'm just forever grateful for having that
mentor.
Yes.
Yeah.
But also, I think that it's important, and we talk about I can never be complacent enough to think, or cocky enough to think, oh, I've seen everything, or we talk about everything. And one thing Doris Clark taught me was, her husband, of course, is an attorney. Any contract you write, can you defend that in front of a judge? And every single contract, that's in the back of my mind. If something went south, and I've never had that lawsuit experience and I'm so grateful.
Yeah.
I mean, because it could happen, and certainly you hear about it. But just having that in your mind, and Brooke is wonderful at always making sure. I always say she keeps me out of real estate jail, but that sometimes she'll say, did you mean that? Is that the way you meant that? Or maybe that should be clarified. And I so appreciate that.
Dotting the T's and crossing the I's.
Well, and we talked about that, which I appreciate. It's a skill. And also just sending an email. Brooke will send an email and she'll say, hey, can I read this to you? And does this sound the tone that I want it to? Because we know what we mean, but so many times in the written word, it's different. And I think that's one thing that has changed in these 30 years that I've been doing this. In the old days, we knew what everybody drove, every other realtor drove. We knew where they lived because we wrote on carbons, and you'd rip, the client got a carbon and the other agent got one, and you kept one, and the title company got one, and those were your contracts. And so on a weekend, you didn't email them. We didn't have email.
No.
So you delivered it to the other agent's house, and we just knew each other more.
Right.
And I think now with texting and emailing, it's all so convenient and wonderful.
Yeah.
But it really takes away from, you can take a text or an email out of context or with your own irritation when the other person didn't mean it that way.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or it's just easy to miss things, or
Yes. Oh no, that makes
when
so much
you
sense.
can't ask questions like, well, clarify, like, did you mean this, or
or the emotion even behind it.
Right.
You can't feel that through a text,
Right.
unless I put like 3 exclamation marks, like to know that that's excitement.
You can put a smiley face behind it, but that doesn't mean
it's not
it's friendly.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
well, that's a great, I mean, do you think when you first started, for the amount of agents that were in the Valley, to now, how close knit you guys were,
there were about 100, I think. I wish I knew, and a lot of those records have been lost. I mean, they could be found, I suppose, but now we have almost 300, and there are so many agents. Unless you've had to deal with them, you just don't know them. Brooke and I make it a point to really try. We don't always make it to our association meetings,
the monthly,
but we really try to go. And today we took a live class. And it was fun to be in a live class with all those people again today. It kind of feels pre-COVID, but really our continuing education was always live once. And I feel like you learned more, and the interaction and the energy is different and better.
Well, there's so many people, even just today, that 4 years in, I still have not necessarily met face to face. I communicate with them regularly.
Sure.
We text, we email. Tonight, Loris introduced me to somebody, and he's like, "Okay, now I have a face for that person that I get emails from."
Yeah. Oh, I know. All that tech stuff, and
so it's positive. All those changes are positive. E-signatures, how convenient! I remember when those first came out. I resist technology. I'm pretty good at buying it, but I'm not so great at using it. And I remember those e-signatures. I thought, we're in a small market. When are you ever going to use that?
Right.
Well, every day.
Well, if you think, like, what if the buyer they're in a different state,
right?
But
even across town.
Yeah.
On a snowy day. Maybe that person doesn't want to come out on a snowy day when you can just send them something they can sign at home. Easy.
My gosh. What was the average, like, from start to finish to buy a house back then? Like, days?
Well, it was probably in the 2000s, but early 2000s, Christy Chapel did a closing for me in 5 days.
Wow.
And that included the appraisal.
Oh, wow.
That was record time. She was working for Countrywide. Of course, they went under, maybe because they did loans so fast.
Maybe.
But it really wasn't different.
Sure.
Even though it was more cumbersome and less automated, the time
didn't change.
Really didn't change. You could do a month,
sure,
or so.
Yeah, that's pretty typical.
Through COVID, it was longer, but only because we were waiting for appraisers because we didn't have enough.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, and how many we have, bids out for that are in Boise.
Right.
It's hard to get someone up here, and then we would always try to see if we could do more than just one and have it to be a full day's worth for them to, have it work to come up. So, yeah, definitely understand that.
Yeah, so that's a really good question, but it really didn't change.
It didn't change. You'd think some tech would, help some things, but does it really help some things?
I think, though, there are so many more disclosures and so much more to underwriting than there were, so probably it would be faster if not for those additions.
That's true, for sure. I kind of want to go into, the different areas that, you have been in the industry and different brokerages. Your first one that you kind of went and did with others, I want to kind of talk about that.
Well, so I was with Doris for about 3 years, and then some things changed there, and so Shelley Rudolph and I and Rhonda Laybourne, my old classmate from real estate school, and Shelley was working with me at the time. And then Kristen Gibson and I grew up together. I was a year ahead of her at school at Lapway, where we grew up. And so the four of us, along with some agents from Grangeville and another friend of Shelley's, came as a secretary. We started Realty Associates. And the idea behind that was really just to be more a co-op. So all of us had a financial interest in the business, and we hired a broker, which was more comfortable for us because all of us just wanted to sell real estate. And we got up to at the highest 10 agents. So that was, I think we started in 97. I should have looked this up, and I think we did it for 10 years, and we had 10 agents, and we really outgrew our space.
Because you were in the little.
We were in the little strip mall by the
Yeah,
Wrangler.
yeah.
So we were between Geronimo's at the time and the Wrangler, and there was a hair shop, and you could set that you knew what day and time it was by the little ladies that would have their hair done weekly. It was a great spot, and it was a really fun time in my life. We were always number 2 next to Coldwell Banker Tomlinson. So they were the big boys, and then we were the small independent right under them. And per agent, we sold more than anyone. We were very picky about who we had with us. We all got along great. It was wonderful. But we outgrew our space. We could have expanded. So we were talking about franchising and what do we do? And our lease was coming up. So my husband and I made an offer on some property. My husband's a general contractor. And so we were going to build a building, and AAA, the travel insurance company, was going to lease from us. So that felt comfortable that we would have part of our payment covered. And I'm a saver. I don't want to take financial risks. And it was very expensive. So we had plans drawn. We were ready to go. And then I found out that John Butler from Butler & Associates in Coeur d'Alene, Spokane, who had been the top agent in the world for Century 21, was coming to Lewiston. He bought the Century 21 building, the old First Bank building downtown, and he was coming to town. Well, we had a little meeting. Okay, ladies, the top guy in the world is going to be our competition. What do we do? So they said, well, you should call him. You should call him. So I did. And I asked him if I'll never forget the conversation. Very nice. I like John a lot. Are you going to try to recruit our agents? And he said, well, you know how it works. And I said, why don't you just buy our small company, and then you'll open the doors at Century 21 in Lewiston as number 2. You'll have all this space, and we'll just all come work for you. We even have a broker. We have a secretary, we have a broker, we have all these great agents. And so that's what we did. He and his wife came down the next day, and we put a deal together. And so then we were Century 21 agents.
That's how that happened.
So that's how we all moved. And then later, they divorced, sadly, and then they sold to John and Wendy Price. And so I didn't change brokerages, but the brokerage changed around me.
Right.
And then we left a little over a year ago.
I was going to say, yeah. When did that?
And transitioned into, again, COVID did this. And professional realty services is a wonderful hybrid of course, every single agent, brand new or not, is running their own business. Because even though you're working with this group of agents that you love, they're still your competitors, and they're also your coworkers. Even outside the company, all of us agents depend on each other to list things and to sell our listings.
Individual.
So it's a very unusual business, a very competitive, but unusual. And so what professional realty services allows us is to have the support of a franchise and a brokerage. Terrific support. We couldn't be happier with the support that we have. But it's all remote. But we're very connected to them.
Great.
But it allows us to have the face of our own business. So my husband and I bought the building that we're in. I don't know if you remember it. It was not great. But it's just perfect for us. And my husband and I, it is cute. I'm very proud of it. We leased part of it to a wonderful, quiet tenant. And then we have 3 offices, 3 offices, 2, I want to say 3 bed, 2 bath, because it used to be a house. But my husband and I have a subdivision he's building of ADA compliant townhouses, which has been a dream of mine for a long time. And so our HOA, the bookkeeper comes there, his bookkeeper for his business comes there, and it's just really a wonderful personal hub.
Oh yeah.
For our businesses to be in one spot. And then it just gives Brooke and I all kinds of, Thane is the busiest street in town.
Absolutely.
And so our reader board, we feel like we can give messages to our community. We were able to say Merry Christmas, and
I know I liked your a Vista, thinking of Vista.
Yeah.
I liked that one. Sweet.
So my daughter-in-law Lauren is in charge of the controls on. We direct her to.
She does all the
Yes,
I was happy
board
to hand
stuff.
she has a marketing degree from WSU. So
when we were all going to be in the same building.
Sure.
Laura's just like, Lauren can help us with that. I'm like, she can do that.
but we do love to
We-
give her suggestions and messages.
Oh, good. That's cute.
And
She's so
Love
good at
that.
it. She does a great job.
and we love
Love it.
just being able to communicate with all those people. And people will call, or my social circle, Costco, people will say, "Oh, I loved your reader board." So that's fun.
That is fun. I like that. The where is like the main hub for the professional realty services? Where are they
So
based?
the broker that we have the most to do with is in Coeur d'Alene.
Okay.
Their main offices are in Spokane.
Oh, got it.
But
Okay. Are
They have
north-
they cover multiple states.
Okay.
I think
Five.
5 states. And so-
Northwest.
yeah. So our main point of contact is in Coeur d'Alene.
Sure.
I think they have an office in Coeur d'Alene, but their main
Mhm.
headquarters building is in Spokane.
Yeah. When moving, I guess, different brokerages, I guess, do you reach out to them, or is it more of like a recruiting thing? How does that work?
When you're going to change,
Or if you're thinking about
you're
changing.
thinking about changing. Well, I would not be an expert on that. I think that many. It's funny when you're an agent and you get to a level of sales, then, and maybe this doesn't happen so much anymore, or maybe I'm just seasoned and people don't call me anymore, but it used to be when I was younger, or when I, Blake had 5 years in, and maybe brokers could see, oh, she hasn't fallen apart yet, and she's got a measure of success. Then you just get all these recruiting calls all the time.
Mhm.
People want to take you to lunch, and John White from Ray J. White and Sons, Dick White's dad, we used to meet for iced tea. He liked to have iced tea at Pioneer Pies, and I loved him.
Aw.
And so I would always say, "This is not a recruiting. I'm not leaving." And he'd say, "I know," but we would visit about things. So again, I have dear friends, lifelong friends in other offices,
Sure.
and I depend on them on a personal level and a professional level.
Mhm.
But and there are agents that have changed a lot. We've recently kind of had a shakeup,
Right.
and I know I've had to go to the MLS and say, now which office are they in?
Huh.
But for us, what I was really looking for was to have really a hybrid. Could I go out on my own? Yes, I could.
Right.
But there's so much technology that I don't want to be responsible for. Brooke doesn't do not want to be responsible for all those things. And so what Professional Realty Services provides is all that support, but I have my own space. Many of their agents and other agencies which are emerging like that.
Mhm.
EXP, I don't really know anything about them, but those types of brokerages, a lot of those agents work from home because during COVID, we learned that we can work from home.
Mhm.
But that doesn't appeal to me at all.
You're an office.
Home is my sanctuary.
Mm.
I want a professional space to come
Separated.
into.
Mhm.
Not to say that we don't on the weekends have our laptops on our kitchen counter. Of course we do.
Sure.
Of course we do.
Yeah.
And we'll take calls. But I want to set a time. I want there to be a separation of time and not.
Well, when you have 2 of us working together, text is so hard. Sometimes, Loris will text me something, or she'll say, "Oh, I didn't tell you that over the weekend," or whatever. So it's good to have that space where we come together, we have our little okay, this is what happened over the weekend, or, a little catch up, or, hey, we need to do this or that. It's just easier communication wise, working with 2 people.
Yeah. Exactly.
I'm not a work from home girl. Not at all.
There's too much laundry to be done.
Oh,
I get distracted.
I know.
It's too
I'm
many
sure
chores.
COVID really just, affected that space. This is my workspace.
Yeah.
This is my home space. But
Right.
COVID having to be at home. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that was hard.
I'm sure. I know. That was a struggle. With your guys' dynamic, what are some like things that you guys do as a team that you think is maybe different from other teams?
Well, if I'm joking around, I say that I'm Loris's babysitter.
I don't think it's not a joke. It's not. It's not a joke.
I'm fortunate. She's a dear, dear friend and has been for a long time. And like I said, like knowing her, she's been my husband's client. We've been her client, and then she just became a friend, and now she's my boss. But
I don't know who bosses who.
well, sometimes I do have to boss. Hey, we need to get that done.
See, it's always that dynamic though, like
yeah.
the very attentive.
She always says I'm the other part of her brain.
Yeah,
like
that's a good one.
I think we have different strengths.
Yeah.
Brooke is very organized.
Mm-hmm.
Very organized. And I knew when she started to work for me, it would be hard. I would say I didn't have ADD until I started this job because you never finished anything. You're working on a market analysis and you're really into it, and the phone rings and the client is sitting in front of a house and they want to go see something. You're going to put this aside and you're going to go do that. That drives Brooke crazy because she wants things to be.
I'm a complete, like I need to complete a task.
Check mark.
Or when, it took me a long time to figure out with the whole dynamic of it would be a Saturday and Loris would text and be like, hey, can you do this for me? And she did not mean I needed to drive home and and I felt we need to drop everything. I mean, there were dinners. We would be driving to dinner and I'm like, I'll run home and do that right now. And I would be like, okay, you and the girls go get a table. I'll drive home. I'll go do this. And I've just had to learn like, it's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Pump the brake.
Well, and I've learned to say, this is not a rush.
There
I'm
we
just
go.
communicating with you
Yes.
that eventually, sometime in the next 24 hours, this task, it would be
Now
nice.
yours.
It'd be nice to have this. Can't even give you an example, but I really do try to respect Brooke's
Yeah.
family.
Home life.
Life.
Yeah, everyone, and I've learned this too is, when I first was starting, I met with an agent and they're like, you have to be, by the phone whenever I'm working, and I was like, oh, but what if I'm feeding my baby? Just there's those things where it was like that home life work balance.
And I think that balance, which you bring up so beautifully in your podcast, and we're fans, but I think that if you establish just upfront, it's just communication, and it's communication between us. It's communication with our clients. I go to church on Sunday morning. I don't show houses on Sunday morning. You want me to go to church on Sunday morning. It's really good for me. I can show you after, or I have this with my family tonight. I can't do that tonight. And some people are so professional that they don't share. But the relationship that I have with my clients, I'm just like you. I have a family. I have priorities. And so I can just clearly say, I'm having dinner with my husband tonight. I should be free at 8:30 or so. Would you mind me doing it then? Or just whatever that is. And then to give people the expectation of what comes next and then follow through with it.
Yeah.
Don't drop the ball.
Right.
Then people can respect your time. And they say to us often, oh, I didn't mean for you to do that, right away. Just eventually, could you change that picture? Or I don't love that text. Whatever they want us to do, we want to do it quickly. But also, we can't just, we're not robots.
100%. Yeah. 100%.
Right. And so it really is a mutual respect between us, with our clients, and with the professionals, the lenders that we use, or whoever. Our home inspectors. Had a home inspector ask, he wanted to do something later than I wanted him to do, and he was willing to change his plans. I said, don't change your plans for me. One day isn't going to hurt anything. Thank you for telling me what you're doing. I hope you have fun.
It's really all communication. Communication is the biggest
number
key.
one.
Just Sunday, I got out of church, had a text from a client. It's just a simple 5-second text saying, hey, I'm going to run to the grocery store as soon as I get home. And she now has an expectation. And then I followed through. It's that, it's just really.
And she was very, very happy.
It's that simple that.
I like when I get phone calls, I drop kids off normally, right before school. So 8:30 is when we start, really that's like chaos time. Brush teeth, socks are everywhere. And I had a client call and they're like, is this a good time? And I was like, yeah, no, Jenny, no, it was not a good time. But I told her, instead of like talking numbers, I was be like, would it be okay if I could, sit down in like 30 minutes? Would that be okay to call back?
Yeah.
Because in that moment, yes, I can talk, brief. You might hear some stuff in the background. But to like actually give someone like numbers and real time.
Well, and they're not getting your full attention in that
No,
moment.
neither are my kids.
Exactly.
My daughter could swallow dog food for all I know, and so it's like I would rather be able to say, hey, I would love to be able to get to you right now. Just give me maybe a little bit, especially, when my kid, working from home with kids. It's so fun. And my daughter, she's 3 and she's all about mom, which I love, but it's always who's on the phone, And I have clients that work, late night that, especially like the Clearwater paper shifts and the nights. And so they're weird hours, but that's when they can do an application. And I go into a room and I close the door and I look at my husband and he's like, okay, yeah, I got it. So it's that teamwork, which I mean, you guys have. Right. So I can't imagine being completely by myself, not working next to someone. Because whenever I leave for the weekend with my kids or hockey or I go skiing and I have stuff that needs done, my office is such a great, like anybody that has free time will be like, oh yeah, we'll take it. So for the team aspect, I'm sure.
Well, and our clients deserve that. Mm-hmm. I remember when I told you my horrible experiences, laughable. And again, someday in my book, it'll talk about those. I won't name names.
Memoir.
But I better get on that. I keep talking about it.
I love that.
But when you're buying or selling or refinancing, that is what's on your mind. Mm-hmm. And I know that there are today 296 choices.
Yeah.
Well, but 296
other
choices.
Than us, yeah.
Yes.
Other than me that someone could call. So I am humbled and flattered and grateful that someone chooses me, us.
Sure.
And I want to give them my full undivided attention because that's what they deserve and that's what they expect. And it's not, I guess I don't want to work with a client that would not say, yes, I'll give you 30 minutes to get your kids to wherever they need to go. Right. Or for me, or you're at the grocery store or you're doing real life, your other part of life. We don't need to work with that client. We're not going to make them happy anyway. Mm-hmm. And sometimes when we need something from a client and they've just had something happen, then we have to be patient too. But again, like Brooke said, it just really all goes back to communication and the golden rule. I mean, I know it's cliche and it's simple and I've been called idealistic. But really, if we just all treated each other the way we wanted to be treated all the time, it's not rocket science.
Smooth.
Right. And sometimes bad things. We had a transaction last year with one of my dad's high school classmates, an elderly lady. My dad's been gone a long time. And she called me because I asked her, how did you come to call me? And she said, your dad was my classmate, which was so sweet. She had a buyer back out 8 days before closing. We had already signed the closing papers. She had moved to the coast. That was not a phone call I wanted to make.
All of her
Had an estate sale.
She moved in with family.
Horrible things can happen. Not a phone call I wanted to make. Tried to get Brooke to do it. Nope. I didn't really.
I know,
but I called. And because we had communicated with her all along and we had developed a trusting relationship and the market was still crazy, we knew we'd get another buyer, and we did. She laughed. She said, well, that's bad news, but I'm not coming back. And we were able to get it closed and we got to keep getting this money and that all worked out. But again, just communicating, even if it's bad news. The minute something bad happens, you have to tell the other person. You have to tell them.
Absolutely. Don't backpedal.
No.
Or point the finger at someone else, to put the blame.
Or prolonging the inevitable. Yeah. Eventually the conversation has to happen.
Exactly.
Right. Like my husband would say, just rip the Band-Aid off.
Yes, rip that Band-Aid. I was talking to this in another podcast that hasn't been posted yet, but when it comes to like high emotional like transactions, maybe like a death in the family or an asset or talking with families that have to split a property, siblings, how or what's a good advice to give in those high emotional transactions?
Well, I've had a lot of experience with that. And I have in the past, most of them have retired, had a lot of attorneys recommend me. And you get, when you do work like that, you get a lot of estates and you get divorces. And they can be horribly emotional. I really, again, just feel so grateful that someone would trust me to guide them through that. And
That tough time too.
and I have been called the calm on the other end of the phone. But you have to take yourself out of it. That this is not, if people, there's angst in a divorce, this is not your issue. This is their issue. And you are there as a facilitator to take them from point A to point B as fairly as you can. And there are ways to split assets. If you have siblings, for example, that don't trust one another, it's always very sad. But I feel like when I'm put in that role as the agent in the middle of those messes, that it's my job to make things better and not to take sides and just in honoring people, the memory of the person. I know if we ever list an estate, we look for obituaries. We try to find something out about them because it just helps us understand better.
Sure.
And again, I think we both really feel that is a special trust that you just feel so honored to be a part of.
Absolutely. Oh, so many emotions go through, and yeah.
Sometimes agents get, they just allow themselves to get worked up in the drama. And I have said to agents in the past, I'm probably not their favorite. This isn't between us. This deal we are not in the middle of the deal. We are facilitators.
Any emotions that come, it's not towards you.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm not the enemy. We are partners in working toward the finish line. And obviously a seller wants to sell and a buyer wants to buy. Let us figure out together calmly how to move forward.
Good answer. I like that.
Just move forward and don't fight.
Yeah, makes sense. I like when there's a little bit of a gap with how many years of industry you guys have both been in. What is something that you have learned from Brooke? And Brooke, what is something you have learned from Loris?
Oh, I've learned everything from Loris.
I was going to say, I was like,
coming in and within like
here.
3 days.
How are you going to pick one thing?
Never. Oh, one thing. Probably to just it's okay. It's okay. I'm very anxious and high strung and I really I'm a worry ward and so it's okay. It's going to be okay.
Well, I've learned so much from Brooke and I learn from her every day. I think I am just so fortunate, so blessed to have her. I trust her completely. My clients love her. Our clients love her. And I know, back to that work-life balance, we can't have a balance at our client's expense. And real estate doesn't stop. The minute I go out of town, which is not very often, but when that happens, that's when everybody in the world I've ever talked to wants to buy a house, or you get 3 offers on something. That always happens and I always say, if you aren't busy, just plan a trip somewhere. And so my husband and I have a cabin that we love outside Grangeville in Newsom Creek. He's gone there since he was a little boy in the area, and it's our kids' favorite place in the world. There's no cell service, no internet. It's off-grid completely. It's wonderful. We have indoor plumbing, so we're not hillbillies completely. Yeah. But we have gas lights, no electricity, and we love to go there. So before we leave, and we don't get to go often, but I hand my phone over to Brooke, which is kind of like cutting off your hand. Just hand her my phone, and off we go. And I know that, and people are patient. If there's something that they need to see, she can show them. But that gives me a break, but also it's not at anyone's expense.
But that relief to know that is getting done.
Well, and our clients then can celebrate, oh, I'm so glad you're getting a break. But they know that
Yeah, they're still in great hands.
right.
Yeah.
There's no interruption in
Yeah.
service at all. And
Yeah.
I'm so thankful for that. But again, what I've learned from Brooke, she's just so organized. And she says she's high strung and anxious, but she really is just so calm. And we just know that things are going to work out and we're going to do the best we can.
Mhm.
And her organizational skills, I would say I've learned from her on that, except that I haven't really learned. I just depend on her. We know that
She's got it covered.
She's got it covered.
I love your guys' dynamic.
She'll tell me if it's wrong.
Yeah.
Well, she likes a good notebook, but she's got lots of notebooks. So the other day I had to say, how about we don't get another notebook out? How about we already use one of the notebooks?
Combine it.
So it's the first of the year.
Yes.
And we want these new.
He said, you're not going to carry that notebook with you, but you always have your calendar. How about we just do it in the calendar?
There we
She's like,
go.
okay.
She has a notebook and she's always has her notebook. But sometimes I find notebooks that started 6 months ago. That's where that
There
is.
we go.
She's like, hey, look at this list.
Yeah. Yeah.
love
I have
I-
issues.
I love your guys' dynamic though, and visiting the office and being able to, see your work environment and how you guys interact. It's just super fun. I love that.
Well, we want to be, it's a crazy space, but it's a safe space.
I love it. It's so cute. You guys have made it, unique. And yes, if you didn't know where the building was back when, it's got some history, but it's such a cute little spot. So, and again, like you said, it's in the most direct trafficked area that I love seeing the reader board. It's so fun. And where you guys have came, this last year, how long? Over a year now?
Yeah,
October of, so that would have been 22, October, like towards the end of October 22. Yeah.
You're in year 2.
Yeah.
Love that.
it's funny to think about.
Yeah. I kind of want to, ask a little bit about some affordable housing questions, if that's okay.
Please.
Well, and I know your husband with the contract stuff and how you guys have tried or had, put in some plans to get some affordable housing inside the community.
So that isn't quite right.
Oh, okay.
Well, it's certainly affordable to those who can afford it.
Sure.
So I'll tell you the history.
Tell me.
Briefly, which is probably it's not brief. Sorry. When my mother had breast cancer and was sick for 18 years and died at 68. So I was long grown, of course, but at her deathbed, I met this woman I had heard about for years, Francie, her friend Francie. My mom worked for the road department, Nez Perce County Road Department, for years and did lots of other things too. But when she wasn't able to work anymore, she's volunteered. If she felt good, she was volunteering somewhere. And she was a wonderful example. And one of the things that she did was volunteer for, there was a census. And I should know, I didn't know I'd bring this up. I would have looked up the date, but like the 1900 census, that's not quite right, but old.
Mm-hmm.
And it was lost in a flood or a fire nationally. And so communities across the country had this project that they would try to rebuild the census and figure out how many people lived in Nez Perce County at that time. And one of the ways they did that was reading old newspaper and microfilm. And so she was paired with this woman named Francie. And they just got to be the best friends. So I heard about her all the time, but I didn't know her until I met her at my mother's deathbed. It was the weird place to meet someone. Well, a year or so after meeting her, she called me because her husband had Parkinson's and they had built their dream home. They'd come from the west side. They were master gardeners. They had this beautiful 2-acre place, lots of levels. And because he was sick, they needed to find a one level that would be handicap accessible. And that's really when I learned. So this would have been about 2000, I don't know, 8 or 9, that we don't have any handicap accessible housing. We don't.
Mm-mm.
We have one levels. Sometimes they have steps getting into them. Why do people buy one level so they don't have stairs? And yet sometimes one levels have stairs.
Stairs on the outside.
Right. Even in condos, sometimes the doors are narrow.
Right.
None of these things cost a lot more to build when you're building them, but they make a world of difference. And so I learned from Francie that we didn't have that. We only at that time, and I don't know how many now, we only had 3 hotel rooms that were handicap accessible in the whole valley. And so in the back of my mind, and I said this out loud, somebody should build a neighborhood of ADA compliant housing. Somebody should. Well, that went along. And then my husband and I had an opportunity to buy 11 acres at the top of Lindsay Creek between Grell and Powers. Now Aldergrove Street, we put it through. And we're like, well, why not us? And so it isn't low-end housing.
Got it.
They're high-end
Housing.
My husband likes to build. He'll build anything you want, but he likes to build foam block construction. So it's because they're super energy efficient. They're an R50 rather than an R22 wall for energy conservation.
Mm-hmm.
So he builds the highest energy efficiency he can. He's done geothermal. He's done solar, those kinds of houses. So these are foam block construction, which makes them very quiet. But they all have wide doors and just some simple things like putting the electrical outlets up a little higher, because if you're in a walker and you bend over, you have a better chance of falling. But if you raise that about 8 inches, it doesn't look any different, but it helps a person who needs a walker or a wheelchair. And the flooring is rated for wheelchairs, even electric wheelchairs, and they're townhouses, but we do have a homeowners association. So if you want to travel, nobody necessarily knows you're gone. Everything's taken care of.
Sure.
So that's not affordable housing necessarily.
Okay.
But that's what you're thinking.
I knew of you guys trying to, or did, build stuff, in that lot.
Yeah.
And being able to bring more housing, accessible housing into the community.
And we don't have anyone, it's 55 and older. The city of Lewiston required that. I don't know why a younger person would want that, but unless you have a disability, and then any age is fine. But we just felt like that was a niche that wasn't being met. Affordable housing is a whole, and I'm not an expert on that by any stretch. My kids will tell you that I've sold them the dirtiest houses that have ever been sold. Because of my husband's construction business, I find them these great houses with great bones, and then, they've worked for their dad forever, so they can do whatever they want to do. But they're beautiful at the end, kind of like our office. You find something with good bones and ugly exterior, and then there you are.
She sold me the vanilla house.
I sold her a vanilla house.
My husband wasn't, so it took us to convince him of it.
Funny.
I did not. No, it was their decision. I had somebody say a couple of weeks ago, "Thank you for pushing me to do this." I said, "Oh, no, I don't push anybody." She said, "Well, you strongly encouraged me." And that was just to make a visit here. She needed to sell her brother's house, and she wanted me to be responsible for cleaning it out. And I said, there could be treasures I would miss.
Yeah.
Get yourself here.
That's so
And she was
true.
thankful. There were treasures.
That's awesome. That's fun.
So I did sell Brooke a vanilla house, but it's not vanilla anymore. It's beautiful.
I bet. Are you a construction-y, mindset?
So our first house that my husband ever bought, his uncle had bought it for my husband's cousin, his daughter, and it was pretty rough. He came to me and said, "I'm going to buy this house." We were just dating, and I was like, "Okay." And he's like, "Why don't you go over and take a look at it?" It was in the Sunset Edition, and little 2-bedroom, 1 bath, like I think 700 square feet, maybe not even that.
Tiny.
And he said to me, I was like, "Well, give me the key and I'll go look at it." And he's like, "You don't need a key to get in." Oh, like the back door had been kicked in. So you didn't need a key to get in. So that's kind of what we were working with. Luckily, we had some friends that were in construction because we're young and dumb and don't have a clue what we're doing. And they kind of came in and they're like, "We can make this work." And so that's where we kind of learned buy the rough thing. Mm-hmm. And so then when we bought our house in the Orchards, our second home after we got married, we bought the unfinished basement. We bought the completely outdated everything,
bathroom, yeah.
like 1960s, everything original, and we went in and we replaced all the flooring and we painted everything and we did all the trim, and he finished the base or part of the basement. And then, we sold that. And so when we went to look at this house, I'd always said I wanted to be back down in the Sunset Edition. And we walked in, everything was white carpet, white countertops, white walls. I mean, our painters told us that the walls had never actually been painted. They were just primed.
No.
It's like, we way underbid this job.
Oh,
It took a lot of paint. But I fell in love. And my husband was kind of like, I have flipped 2 houses. We have 2 little toddlers underfoot. I do not want to do this again. And I remember going to Tomato Brothers, and we did on the paper a pros and cons list, and we convinced him. I convinced him.
You have that vision.
Yeah.
Though.
I was like, we can do this. We can do this. So we moved in, lived in the basement. Loris gave us all the numbers to all the people. We're going to get this painter. We're going to get this flooring guy. And we had it squared away. We lived in the basement for a week or 2, got the upstairs, done. And it's just been a project. I mean, there's always
something.
There's always something.
Yeah.
I don't care whether it's a brand
house.
I don't care whether it's a brand new house or there's always a project. That's just entrepreneurship.
Well, and trends,
Yeah, it's always changing.
That'll bring me into a question. When you see trends start going, how do you adjust to those trends or give your suggestions on this will not probably be in, or do you? I don't know.
Well, I've heard myself say this over and over and over, and I like Joanna Gaines as much as anybody. But
farmhouse.
My mom and dad built a house when I was maybe a freshman in high school, 8th grader freshman. And my mom paid extra for Harvest Gold. A tub and 2 sinks in the toilet were all Harvest Gold.
Oh,
and the tile to match. And it was more expensive. So downstairs, it was a walkout basement. So I had a bedroom and bathroom down there, and mine was all white because white was cheaper.
Mm-hmm.
Well, so later.
How the tides have turned.
Yes. And so I remember the first time I said it, and I hope I haven't said it too much, but I said, all the shiplap is fun. It's so fun.
Yeah.
But my mom paid extra for Harvest Gold. And so I think that you have to be careful. When my husband built our house, Ann Palmer from Design Directions is I just love her. Just love her. Such a fan. My husband always recommends her, and so do I. She is so tasteful. I don't know if you know her, but she is so tasteful, and she really makes the house reflect her personality. But I know when I was choosing things with her, she'd say, those are both nice, Loris, but they shouldn't live together. Mm-hmm. And so I think I can tell when things are wrong, but I don't necessarily know how to make it right. And I can tell you, we built our house in 2008. There's nothing I would change. There's nothing. And most of the hard surfaces that she helped me pick, you can still buy. They're not, my taste is just eclectic, classic, not trendy. Because I think if you're trendy, then you just don't have as long a shelf life.
Sure.
And some people like to buy a couch every 3 years. I just agonize over decisions like that. No, thanks. I just don't want to do it. And if you like to do it, more power to you. I hate to paint. I don't like to buy furniture. So I tend to spend more money for things that will last than have to make that decision again, because it's just not something I find enjoyable. And again, some people love that. Good for them. Mm-hmm. But we've been talking recently about house plans and the trendiness of house plans. Because sometimes you just have this big, beautiful house, but that was so popular in that period, and that's changed.
Mm-hmm. Especially when I feel like when building prices went up and everyone was like, oh, well, this was our house plan then that they could afford. And then everything was so much more expensive that when it got down to them actually building it, it was like 10 times more than what they thought. So, yeah.
Well, and really it's your I mean, I at least know for me, my house is my biggest like asset.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah,
like
absolutely.
that's a lot of money. I mean, I remember whenever we bought that house feeling like it was so much, you know? And I plan to be there a long time, and it's an investment. And so I think you can do a lot of things with accessories or those things, but to keep it at some point kind of a traditional that will appeal
All around.
because we have to remember we're probably not going to live somewhere forever, someone else, you know. And so that's how whenever I'm looking at something to think, okay, I like this, what can I do to make it feel like me, but yet if someone else came in here and I had to sell tomorrow, this will appeal to a larger.
Yeah, for
Well,
sure.
and making smart changes and choices, and not having someone come in, as we often do, and say, "What were they thinking? Why did you do that?"
Yeah,
I
right.
wish they'd leave a note saying,
No.
"We did this for a reason."
And it is fun. I mean, I love looking at all the different, like Laura was saying, the different floor plans and the eras, like that you can walk through and you're like, oh, that is so mid-century modern. That was so built in, 1965. And it's like the Brady Bunch lived here,
Yeah.
And then you go to Normal Hill and we have one that's 1909 or 1910 and how, grand, and you walk in and it's the big, so I love that
Different.
part of real estate of like seeing it's almost a history
Yeah.
of where we've come.
Well, that's a question I've asked before is what is your favorite neighborhood in the Valley?
Well, for me, if I could pick, if my husband was not so stubborn, sorry, hon. I have always dreamed of living on Normal Hill. My lifelong goal, now I'm probably more, I want to be out in the country, but my lifelong goal is to always buy an old house, an old rundown house, and bring it back to life.
Oh.
Like back to what it was. Because at some point, I always look at a home, no matter what stage it's in, like somebody that was their first home. And we go places all the time, and I was like, imagine this was somebody's very first home. Somebody built this, and they walked in here, and this was their pride and joy. They had put everything into this. And that's like, that would be my dream ideal situation, is buy that like really run down, old, tired, Normal Hill home and just completely throw every penny I owned into it. Add in.
They just have so much character, and the structures and the
And
level.
the history and the feeling of it. Yeah.
Yes, the whole
That would be
neighborhood. Oh, I love that.
I lived on Normal Hill for 18 years and I loved it.
Oh.
I love the sidewalks. I love the old trees. I love to walk. So my husband built a house for us that looks old inside. I mean, it has many craftsman
Love that.
touches.
Yeah.
But he likes new. And but much of our decor is, I mean, I just have lots of family antique pieces that wouldn't fit in a modern space. And so it's funny because our office is very sleek and modern
It is.
and
Yes.
neutral, which is not my home at all. Just funny.
Clean. I like it.
I just like every style. And one thing I love about what he does is I can watch that whole process.
Oh, yeah.
And while it might not be my taste, I love to watch other people watch their taste come to life. I love that. And I love that process just in selling things to people too. I am always kind of horrified when people go into, say, a mid-century modern house and put cabinets in that don't match that, they don't match the period. Right. I think every period has so many wonderful things. If you're buying an existing house, make it modern, make it yours, but do it with a nod to the original design. I think and I think those houses sell for more later.
Oh, yeah.
So
More appealing.
Well, and that's, as I was saying with Anne, that's one of, I like every style. I like modern. I don't live with it, but I like it.
Yeah.
There really isn't a style I can think of that I don't
Is there a neighborhood?
love.
For sure.
Well,
because you've lived all.
we lived out toward Waha on 5 acres, and I loved that. We live at the end of Grell on 5 acres now with a shop. I love that. I think that's the perfect mix because I'm outside the city limit.
Yeah.
But I'm on pavement, so I feel like I'm in town.
Yeah.
I grew up on a gravel road, so
Sure.
on a farm, so I feel I'm small acreage, but so I feel like I'm in town. But I really see the appeal. I mean, the Clarkson Heights has beautiful spaces.
Their view too, some of the views.
Downtown Clarkston overlooking the river. The Orchards has great spots. I mean, just every Sunset has wonderful. Reno. There's so many things.
So many.
Valley Vista has great views. The Elks is great. We just, they all have their own little personality, and I could really live in any of them. But I'm happy where I live, and because we move so often vicariously, I won't be moving anytime soon that I can imagine. I don't think there's a move in either of our futures. Brooke's house, when they bought it, she said, "Oh, this is way too big for us." But now they have 2 teenagers, so
Now it feels
it's perfect.
They have filled it in.
sure.
Now I'm like, oh my goodness, where did all this stuff come from? But
We have well, it's a 3-bedroom house, and all of our rooms. It'd be nice if we had people to come and stay, but we don't have any extra rooms. And I'm just like, if I was to get a bigger house, I'm gonna have double the cleaning, And so it's like it is full of little kid toys, but I'm embracing it, trying not to be such a gruff when they don't put their toys away. But it's that
trust me, you'll miss it.
Yeah,
I just recently, my girls were getting rid of their American Girl doll stuff, and we have a friend who's going to have a baby, so I pulled it back out.
But
we can't donate
I
that.
had well, it was a my twin. It was kind of like they could do the same hair color. So I know. But if we were to ever, I mean, I like our neighborhood where we're at. We go to McSorley, which we love the school there, and but yeah, I don't know. Views, if I was to pick, then I would want something with a good view, which would probably be the Lewiston Hill. But
well, and it changes. Whenever we were buying this house, I wanted to be centrally located. Like I wanted to be close to everything.
Anywhere.
I had
10
little
minutes.
kids,
Yeah.
and now as I'm looking towards my kids are getting older and we're a few years away from them going to college and stuff. Now my husband and I talk and we're like, maybe we want something with a little property and we don't need to be, I love my neighbors, love my neighborhood, sold me the best neighborhood ever. But, so it just always is evolving.
Always, yeah, for sure.
You get to keep the friends. When
Yes.
Yeah.
we have lots of friends that used to be neighbors.
We love our neighbors. We have like 10 kids that go from yard to yard to yard. And there's a couple older, couples and an old lady that lives kind of kitty corner to us. And I love, though, that our kids go over and check up on her and, play with her dog. And we all are so tight-knit.
I always tell people whenever I'm at a showing and you're kind of wrapping up and I'm like, okay, now come drive back by in the evening. Come drive back by on a weekend.
Yeah, summer.
Like, see what this, because right now you're not getting a feel. You have to live with all of this, not just the kitchen counter.
Neighbor dog.
Like,
to live with.
So I always, because I don't ever want anyone to make that rash decision, like in the moment. Like, come just kind of sit in your car and just kind of watch and observe. How much traffic is there? Like,
yeah, love that.
Yeah.
With
how smart she is.
I know, I love it. Again, the dynamic. I love both of your guys' personalities and how it's like a perfect fit.
It is.
And
it's funny how things work out.
Right? With the number of years, this is probably a really dumb question, but I want to ask, so maybe you might know, with how many people you've had as clients, do you know the number of clients you've worked with?
I wish I did, and I wish that that someone had told me to keep track in the beginning. I mean, I have hundreds of people on my client list that I send, postcards to, but I've had, so many of my clients have passed away, or moved away.
Sure.
And Facebook, which, we didn't have when I started, is a wonderful way to keep track of people.
She knows everybody.
She
knows everybody.
Well,
and whether they've been her client directly or just part of a transaction.
Yeah.
She, I think, has had a transaction with everyone.
Well, it'd
be a very interesting number. I would love,
I wish I knew.
Right.
That would be an interesting number.
Yeah.
It would be. But like I said, there are a few hundred people that I keep in touch with regularly. And I've had generations of families. That's always cool.
That's so fun.
3 generations of families that you get to know. And again, it's just such a I just feel so grateful that people put their trust in and that they think of me when most of at the end of the year, and this is, when we're at the beginning of the year, you look back on your client, what you did last year, what do you do better? We don't spend a ton of time on that, but where did your business come from? That's always interesting.
Yes.
And I've always kept track of that. And past clients and past client referrals are my biggest.
Your biggest.
That's the biggest thing.
Sure.
So it's funny when you go to a class or you take a Zoom class or you watch something or you take a class online and they talk about, your Zillow leads or those kinds of lead generations. Like, I just don't do that. I am part of the Dave Ramsey program.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
And I've done that for years and years, and I've sponsored the Ramsey curriculum at Lewiston High School. The first year I did that, the teachers had the pretty expensive curriculum, and the school district couldn't afford it. So I did that, and the teachers had the students write a thank you note to me. So I have a manila envelope I'll, die with like 150 thank you notes saying what that program meant to them, just learning how to budget and save money and buy their first house. That's really special. But other lead generation stuff, I guess maybe I'm lazy that I depend on my past clients I know I'll be busy this year. I know it'll be a great year.
You're right. But you have so much history, with so many that, mine is all referral based from realtors. That's just my biggest one. And so.
But that'll change as time goes
Yeah, exactly. And I'm sure you felt that throughout your years of career. So, and you too, that too. I just love though this, I want to call you a legend.
It's so funny.
You say seasoned or marinated, and I think it's so cool to get, someone like you on here to be able to just, sit down and with the year coming up, you go brand new year. They always say, "Oh, I think I predict this." But how do you kind of perceive the year? Tell people, how you think things will go.
We talked about. Brooke always says she hates goals. I hate goals. She does not. She does not. We have goals. I mean, I think when you're in an office, unlike us we're part of 15,000 agents in states, but we are our own little business in our own little space. And so certainly we have bills to pay, and we can estimate and project and hope and look back at the past. Last year was a good year, but it wasn't my best year. But that's okay. And so we look at those and we think, oh, we'll probably sell about this many houses, but we don't spend a whole lot of time on that. My goal, every transaction, is that when that person sees me at the grocery store, that buyer or that seller, I get a big smile, maybe a hug. Brooke doesn't really like it when people hug her. Strangers hugging Brooke is not such a cool thing. But
I have some clients that are my favorite.
Some clients, but that's my goal. Is every transaction ends with people who think they were treated fairly. They are happy with that it's a positive experience all the way around. They're happy. They were heard. We met their expectations. Maybe mom or dad passed.
Sure.
You helped me through a hard time. That's the goal. And it just sounds so cheesy, but the golden rule, if you just treat people the way you want to be treated, that business will come to you. And it just will. So that's our goal. And then, I can't make a decision about some things. Like it took forever to pick furniture. We finally had desks built because it's a small space.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
It had to be just right. So I need to buy some decor for the office, and I've gone a bunch of different directions. And so that's a goal.
I love that.
We'll get that taken care of this year. Probably. If Brooke pushes me too.
Do you have any goals?
Like you said, I am not a goal person. I am
future endeavor.
It's just continue to learn. Like it's ever changing. Nothing's ever the same. And so I guess my goal is to just kind of accept it as it comes and to
Like
try to
that.
just ride the wave and,
Evolve with
Yeah.
the times. Yes.
I think obviously there's always family time's always a priority and that balance. And we all say those things every year, right? Like, we're going to be better at this and I'm going to eat out less. But I think this year it's just really to like maybe not make the goal, to just say,
Yeah.
let it be. Because
Just
I
live
am
your
such a like, I want it to all fit perfectly in the box. So to just kind of let go of some of that and just, it's going to be what it's going to
The
be.
goal to live your life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Brooke is really disciplined. Like, she gets up really, really early in the morning and works out.
That's
And
your routine.
I am
You're a
a
routine set
very
person.
structured,
Yeah.
routine person.
Mm.
Yes, very much so. So that's what I need to let go of.
I think that's a goal, to be more,
I like that. Yeah.
to have her time. And that makes her
Yeah.
life go more smoothly. And I have so she mentioned that her husband is a trainer.
Well, technically, he's
He's-
not
no.
anymore. His ladies won't let him go.
So
So-
he used to be a trainer at a gym. And I didn't think I needed a trainer at the gym years and years ago. How many years?
Well, McKinley's 16,
Okay.
and I was pregnant with her.
16 years ago. 16 years ago, a friend and I started working out with Ryan, her husband. And then now there are 6 of us. 6 of us, old lady exercise group. We should come up with a name. And so
His ladies.
His
ladies.
yes. And we won't let him quit because he knows all our aches and pains. And we're all stronger because he pushes us a couple mornings a week
How fun.
to work out. So
Move your body.
He really would
Yeah.
say they just talk a lot.
well, I'm sore today from yesterday. So it was not just,
It was not wasted.
it was not wasted. We did do a lot of talking, but
Quality time.
yes.
Yes. So I
Yeah.
like
So they just like, they've all become dear friends of ours.
Yes.
And, he's not at a gym anymore, but they
That's
just
so
don't
cool,
let him
though.
go. And
They
then,
can't-
it's funny how it all evolves,
Yeah.
16 years ago, she was in training with him the first day I had to leave my brand new firstborn baby for the first time. And I came in tears and the ladies are all crying. And he's like, what's wrong with all you people? And here we are 16 years later.
Fun
Yeah.
though. I mean, to look back on those memories of how this started.
Right.
I know.
You never knew. And isn't that just the great thing about life, that you go along and you look back and you think, this step led me to this step, led me to this step.
Yes.
And I wish I knew this there.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what seasoned agents can give younger agents. Maybe keep track of every person ever. Don't lose track of those people.
Yeah.
Not because you want to sell them something again, but just because you care.
The memory behind
Just because you care about what happened to
Sometimes
those
it's an
people.
accomplishment. I mean, she is accomplished in what she does. You don't get here,
That's sweet of you.
without
Oh, yeah.
accomplishments along the way. And so
Exactly.
to look back and say, I mean, that would be, I'd never thought about that, but that would be an interesting number to know. Just as like,
Right.
wow, you
I mean,
did
I
that.
have a
You've
thought, but it's like it might
Yeah.
not even be a ballpark.
You've
you know?
like touched that many people. I mean, buying a house is a big part of it's people are getting married. People are, like you said, all those lifetime moments
It's
are
a
associated.
change
Yeah.
in your life.
Well, if you think about, I mean, sometimes I've sold as many as, 60 plus houses a year. Last year I sold 33, 15 million last year, which is, again, not my record year. I think 23 million is the most. But so if you average that 40 to 50, let's say 40,
I need my
40,
calculator.
well, it'd be about 1,200.
Yeah.
If you had 40 transactions a year for 30 years, it'd be about 1,200 groups. I mean, so, it's a good thing you didn't know that. When you started, it'd scare you to death, right?
Right.
Well, there's so many things that I remember my husband saying when I started. He said, I think realtors are, that's a tough group. You don't have thick enough skin. And I said, all I expected was somebody to tell me the truth and call me back. And I'll just never forget how it felt to sit on the other side of the desk. And we talk about that a lot. Again, it's about that client experience. And not even the people, just the people that we are involved in, but it's that buyer. It's my seller's buyer. I want them to have a good experience, because if they don't, then they may have animosity toward my seller.
Right.
So it's my job even if the other agent is not cooperating, to smooth that out as much as I can.
On both sides.
On both sides.
Mm-hmm.
It's my job to get along
Mm-hmm.
because both of these people deserve the best experience they can have. And that just makes me happy because that's what I wanted.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, we live in such a small community.
Right.
Really, we all,
We're a whole different era, or in this little niche. I don't even want to say it, compared to big cities or just even Moscow.
So you're eventually going to be on PTA with that seller or that buyer. Your kids are going to play a sport together. You're going to volunteer somewhere together. I mean, your paths are going to cross multiple times.
Yes.
In that process. And so you never want someone to have bad feelings about something that should be positive for everybody. I mean, it's a positive, whether you're selling or buying.
Yeah.
Everybody should walk away feeling
that they were fairly treated.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I'm such a people pleaser that it's like if I make one person maybe a little, I won't sleep.
Well, you just have to know there's some people you can't please.
Yes.
And if
the goal,
if Brooke yelled at me, I'd feel bad. Sure. I'd feel so bad. Or my husband or my kids, my family, my friends, I would feel bad.
Mm-hmm.
But if someone in a transaction is having a difficult time and they're frustrated and that lands my direction, you have to learn to know it's not okay to talk to me that way, but I understand your frustration and not take that personally.
Her favorite saying that she taught me is, you don't have to go camping with them. It's going to be okay.
Right.
Well, I mean,
that should be on a shirt.
She would remind me, you're not going camping with them. It's going to be okay.
Meaning, we're not in close proximity.
Yep.
These people, they're having a bad time, but we didn't cause it.
Mm-hmm.
And we can't really make it better. Sometimes you can make it better, but if you can't, it's okay. Just let that go.
Let it go. I should be on a shirt.
Yeah,
That should totally be promoted.
Well, I don't know that really should have. I do say that probably quite a bit. We're not going camping. This isn't our leisure time.
Yeah.
We're not, just sticking our toes in the clear water and enjoying ourselves. We just need to get through this.
Yeah.
And Psychology Today years ago said that being involved in a real estate transaction is as stressful, even in the best of circumstances, as getting a divorce or the death of a loved one. Think about that. So we deal with stressed out people all the time, even then the happiest. Even if you're buying your dream house, you are stressed to the max and you want accessibility to that agent and you want somebody to hold your hand. And we remember how that feels, and that's our job.
You've been through it. You have done it for so long. It's just, makes perfect sense.
There were lots of phone calls to my husband. Could you call Loris? Just ask her today. I'm sure that she was like, why did I ever?
You were so easy. I always think you were so hard.
There's a period in there where kind of nothing happened, where you're doing
your work and it's this,
twiddle
the thumb.
There is kind of this waiting period. So you have to remind yourself even too.
Yes.
I mean, it'll feel like
even to that's where our feelings is, even to the clear to close. That ink is dry on that paper. Then it's a sigh of relief.
But in the meantime,
yes,
those buyers or sellers, they're wanting, like something should be happening. Something should be happening. So
I understand very, very much.
We know you.
Well, guys, I think I've taken a good chunk of your time out today, but I really want to thank you for coming on here. Brooke, Loris, I always do a cheers at the end. Cheers. Thank you.
It's delicious, by the way.
Good.
Good job. Thanks for having us.